We have a massive Boston Celtics trade update to go over today. Is following the NBA draft and Brad Stevens pulling off some masterclass moves. We have some big updates surrounding their next move as multiple reports have dropped revealing the future behind Sam Hauser and more. You're going to want to stay tuned till the end of this episode as well. We have some interesting reports to go over. Before we get into it all, folks, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Celtics content. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. And thank you guys again for your continued support over here, folks. A lot to go over today. It's been a crazy past 48 hours. Obviously, round one, round two of the draft. The Celtics got their work done with the 28th pick. And then, of course, some interesting things have happened with the Celtics in the second round that, of course, Bruce covered yesterday. I'm happy with the way that the draft went overall for this Boston Celtics team. But now their focus has shifted to the trade market. We have some updates surrounding where they're planning on going from here with both Sam Hauser, Luke Kornet, and a lot of guys like that. And of course, Brad Stevens came out recently and shed some light in how their plan is to keep a lot of these guys, including Al Horford, players like that. But reports have continued to escalate surrounding these two. So let's dive right into it here. And you can see this here. And this is from Ray Almenda, a reporter. He said that the Warriors aren't done in their discussions with the Celtics on acquiring a player or two. And this is, of course, a couple of days ago. And obviously, again, Brad Stevens came out and Bruce had a video on it a few days ago. Or yesterday rather, and basically talking about, or the day before, whatever it was, basically talking about how the Celtics basically, they want, Brad Stevens want, one of their priorities, of course, retaining some of these guys, but Sam Hauser still seems extremely likely to be gone at this point, just given the fact that their salary at this moment is in the bit of, it's in an interesting spot, and they have a lot of holes to fill within this team. But it's interesting that the Warriors aren't done in their discussion. Now, keep in mind, this was before the draft finished, so there is a possibility that, this was just for draft picks and things like that. But I think the Warriors in general are a team to keep an eye out on for Sam Hauser. And of course, all of this stems from the fact, and we also have a Jayson Tatum injury at the end, but all this stems from the fact that Chris Mannix came out and said, and of course this was before the Jrue trade, but he said that Sam Hauser, a 40+% three-point shooter, has generated strong interest. And of course, he's entering the final year of his $45 million deal over 4 years. And since then, they of course shed some salary with Jrue Holiday. They shed some salary with, of course, Kristaps Porziņģis being gone as well. But we know that there is some strong interest being generated surrounding Sam Hauser, and that has continued after the draft as well. As you can see this here, an article dropped from, I believe it was Bobby Marks very recently. And you can see this right here. It is a mock trade and a proposed trade revealing that not only are the Celtics still shopping Sam Hauser, but reveals some interesting details surrounding what a package would look like for the three-point sniper. And we'll dive into this and we'll dive into some other things as well. But it's the center, Duop Reith, going to the Celtics for forward Sam Hauser, center Xavier Tillman, and a 2031 second-round pick. Even if the Celtics would miss Holiday's veteran leadership and defense, along with Hauser's three-point shooting off the bench, moving on from those two contracts could pay off for Boston in the long run as they reset their books and try to build a new winning roster around Tatum and company. The two separate trades not only save Boston over $300 million, of course, they already traded Jrue Holiday in salary, but also fortify its front court. And of course, obviously, Kristaps been traded as well. Considering how much the repeater tax penalties are set to blow Boston's pair moving forward, even moving on from a seemingly market value contract like Hauser's would lead to major savings when factoring in the luxury tax. And we know the Celtics and Brad Stevens have done a great job at getting out of the second apron, but they still want to shed some money. They're still in the luxury tax. They're, hefty, like a lot away from that. And moving on from Sam Hauser, while it's not necessarily a guarantee, and I think Brad Stevens is probably still, debating keeping him, I think their number one priority, Brad Stevens right now, is probably retaining some of the free agents that they have, either Al Horford or Luke Kornet. And that's what Brad Stevens came out and said. They're going to try to retain a couple of those guys because they have no center at this point. But for Sam Hauser, while maybe they keep him, they want to keep him, it's best, it's probably best to let him go. Now, of course, in this trade, they're basically getting, Duop Reith, who's an interesting, intriguing name. But again, it's mainly a salary dump here. Getting rid of Sam Hauser, Xavier Tillman, who's interesting, and a 2031 second-round pick. So, in multiple deals where, ironically enough, you didn't have to give up any assets for, of course, getting rid of Jrue Holiday or Kristaps. You give up a second-round pick in this trade, but you also get an interesting player in Duop Reith, who in his rookie year, was quite decent. Last year, averaged 4.6 points a game. The year before, of course, averaged 9.1 points a game. He's an interesting undrafted center that could play some of the, play some minutes there regarding the course, the front court for the Celtics. They need a center, and you're getting one back technically in Duop Reith, but then of course with Sam Hauser being gone, we all know, and it's going to be bittersweet if Sam Hauser leaves, how good he was specifically against the Mavericks there in their championship run when they beat them in the finals, and they were some elite perimeter defense. We think back to some of those clips where Sam Hauser randomly was switched on to Luka Doncic and was guarding Luka Doncic in general and was doing a fantastic job, was obviously ultimately rewarded with a hefty contract, which ultimately now isn't even that big of a deal. The actual contract itself, 4 years, $45 million, it's not crazy like the Jrue Holiday one, ended up maybe being now, or even the Kristaps one. It's very, it's market value, but the Celtics are at a unique point where you know, they can't necessarily, I mean, they can afford to keep him, but if they have wanted to do other moves, get deeper down in the out of the luxury tax rather, it would be a move that would make a lot of sense. Now, keep an eye on this here as well. You can see this here, and this is just a proposal. Atlanta's $25 million trade exception expires July 7th. My top trade targets here are Sam Hauser and Ty Jerome, both clean fits with positional size and shooting. Boston gets below the first apron in the Hauser deal. Cleveland avoids letting Jerome walk for nothing as a second apron team. So this is another, piece of information here. So in a Boston trade, if they trade with the Atlanta Hawks, they'd be able to get below the first apron in this deal. But also, it makes a lot of sense for the Atlanta Hawks. And obviously, you're at the point where, again, is a trade for Sam Hauser likely? I think at this point, it's probably the most imminent trade regarding the bunch. But we haven't really heard too many teams linked to Sam Hauser recently. Again, the new report dropped from Bobby Marks linking the Trailblazers to him. The Trailblazers did take on Jrue Holiday. So, there is some interesting things if they'd still want to do that following, taking on Jrue Holiday. That's still up in the air. Would it make a lot of sense? Of course, that's still a question mark. But at the same time, it's an interesting conversation to be had. And then you obviously talk about Atlanta Hawks. I think they make the, even more sense possibly. Of course, they have acquired Kristaps Porziņģis. You'd be able to get, if they're trying to win now and surround Trae Young with talent, Hauser would be a perfect fit alongside Trae Young to be, a sharpshooter. And again, he's averaging 8.5 points a game last year. His three-point shooting has never really wavered, always been above 40%. He is an elite shooter. And maybe there's a role where they keep him. Again, the Eastern Conference is wide open. We know they traded Jrue Holiday. They traded, Kristaps Porziņģis. I still think more dominoes are to fall here. But at the end of the day, it would be very interesting to see if, they work with the Blazers once again to send another guy out. But at the same time now, with, the Trailblazers taking on Jrue Holiday's, contract, it'd be interesting to see if they want to take on more money from the Celtics in a Sam Hauser deal and how that all works. Because again, this is it's an interesting one. But let's also touch on a couple things before we wrap up. Let me know your favorite Sam Hauser moment, assuming that he does, of course, get traded and what that means going forward there. But let's also touch on a quick update surrounding, Jayson Tatum. So Brad Stevens came out and said Jayson Tatum is progressing, but he won't be, able to return until he's fully ready. They won't rush Tatum's recovery timeline after he suffered an Achilles injury in the Eastern Conference semifinals. They wanted to say, when asked about, you can see this here, Boston President of Basketball Operations Brad Stevens said the All-Star is progressing well following surgery, but asked whether the team had put a potential timeline on return. We do, and we don't, and we won't. It's small steps right now. He's actually progressed great, but I don't know what that means in regard to projected timelines. That will be in consultation with him and everybody else to make sure when he hits the court, he is fully ready. So basically saying he's taking baby steps, and obviously for Jayson Tatum, you're going to want to take, he's an absolute beast, right? So you're going to want to take those steps with him and make sure that he's 100% healthy, but he's going to miss almost all of next season. And of course, the trading Kristaps, they traded Jrue Holiday. They're going to be in an interesting spot. They're trying to get under the luxury tax. They're trying to get, and they got out of the second apron. It's going to be interesting to see what they do going forward. But let me know down below your thoughts on this. Obviously, this trade here proposed by Bobby Marks recently, because of the Jrue Holiday trade, it's slightly less likely, but again, it still could happen. But also, of course, the Atlanta Hawks as a notable team. But that'll wrap it up. Let me know down below your thoughts are. Cheers.